Hey everyone, I'm Phil Nash from DataStax, and this is a quick start guide to using AstraDB in TypeScript. You're going to see how to store data and vector embeddings in AstraDB and run vector similarity searches. So let's dive in. First things first, what's AstraDB? Well, it's a NoSQL database that can store both your application data and vector data. And we'll get into vector embeddings and how AstraDB makes them easy to work with shortly. If you haven't already, make sure you sign up for a free AstraDB account. And once you're in, let's jump into the AstraDB portal together. So I've opened VS Code and I've already initialized this project using npm init. I'm just going to install a couple of dependencies that we're going to use for this, starting with the AstraDB client. So that's npm install datastax / AstraDB-ts. And then because this is a TypeScript project, I'm just going to install some development dependencies, tsx, so I can run the TypeScript project, and the node types, so that TypeScript doesn't complain at me. Cool, so I've also created 3 blank files, Quickstart Connect, Quickstart Upload, and Quickstart Find, which will be populated using the code from the Quickstart. So we can jump into the documentation by going to our browser and heading to docs.datastax.com, where we can find the AstraDB serverless Quickstart. This is going to take us through a few things we've already done, like creating a database and storing the credentials. In fact, we haven't stored the credentials yet. So what we need is an API endpoint and a token with which to access the database API. So if we go to our database in the Astra dashboard, we'll find, now that it's created, we can find under database details the API endpoint, which you can copy there, and an application token, which you can generate with that button. I've already stored my credentials in my environment, and you can do the same by following the instructions here. Now we've installed the client, this code will help us connect to the database. We can copy it into our project using the little flipboard icon and copy it directly into our project. So let's have a look at what this code does. We are importing the API client as well as a couple of types from the AstraDB library, and then we're creating ourselves a connect database function. This is going to just create that connection to the database. It uses the endpoint and the API token and brings them out of the environment, and then initializes the new API client using the token, and then creates a database connection using client DB and the endpoint that we made earlier, finally returning the database. The other thing this file does is just define an interface for the book. This is the data that we're going to be storing in our database, in our collection. It had a bunch of information about a book, including title, author, things like summary and genres, and other useful data. So let's move on with a quick start. We've got this code, so let's scroll down to the next section, inserting data into the database. Now this quick start comes with a sample JSON dataset of a load of book information, which you can download here. I've already downloaded it to the project here, so you can see it's got all that information about the books there. So once we've done that, copy this code and insert it into Quickstart Upload and save that. And let's have a look at what this file does. We're going to bring in the connected database function that we defined in our previous file, as well as the book type and the types from the client library. There's 2 functions in this file. We create a collection, so this allows us to take the database and create a collection. So inside a database, we have collections, and inside collections, there are documents. And this collection is going to get set up with a collection name and some settings. This is setting up its vector index. So what are vector embeddings, just quickly? Vector embeddings are a way of capturing the meaning of content. That's text, images, or other media. You can capture the meaning of them in a long list of numbers called a vector. That list of numbers is technically a point in a multi-dimensional space, but we can just think of it as a list of numbers for now. It's created via a machine learning model, and that machine learning model captures the meaning of that content. And then when we store it as a vector, we can compare that against other vectors. And that's what vector databases and vector indexes are very good at doing. This collection is getting set up with a vector provider, NVIDIA in this case, and a model NV Embed QA, where it's actually built into AstraDB itself. So we don't have to do anything to create the vector embeddings. The database and the collection is going to do that for us. And so when we create that collection, we're going to return it. And then there's a second function in which we upload the data. And so that's going to take the data that we downloaded, the JSON file, map it into an array of JavaScript objects. It's going to add a new property to the book this vectorized property, and that is the property that is going to get turned into a vector. And so using the embedding string creator function here, which is a function we pass in, and in this case is going to return a summary and the genres from the book. Now we do need to update the path here to the data set. And once we've done that, we can run this file, npm tsx quickstart upload. And that is going to go ahead and create our collection, setting it up with that embeddings model to vectorize the data that we send into it. And once it's created the collection, it's then going to upload all of the books that we have in that JSON data set. Now we've inserted those 100 items into the database, we can go have a look at them inside of our data by going to the database and going to the Data Explorer and then loading the Quickstart collection. And as you can see here, we've got a bunch of data that's been set up, including things like titles, authors, summaries of the books, as well as vectors from the database, from the data that we vectorized. Finally, we can move on to now searching for this data, so getting it back out of the database. So if we scroll right down to the bottom, we've got our final bit of code, finding data in the database. Copy that and move it over to our Quickstart find file. And now this file is just one big function that's going to do, a couple of things. We're going to connect to the database. We're going to bring a reference to our collection by calling on database collection with the name that we used to start it. And then we're going to make 3 different searches. Our first search finds books with a rating greater than 4.7. So this is just a regular filter on a database. And in this case, we call on collection. We use find rating greater than 4.7. We also limit it to 10 objects. And this is returned as a cursor, so we can, it's a asynchronous cursor, so we can asynchronously loop over it, returning documents from the cursor and then printing them out. The second search is a vector search. So this is going to find a single scary novel. So we're taking the string, a scary novel, and we're going to send that into the database to sort it and vectorize it. And so what this does is use that same NVIDIA model to turn a scary novel into a vector, and then compare that against all the vectors that we created for the books that were already in the database. This is going to return just one book, the most scary book, according to the vector search. Finally, we're going to do a hybrid search, in which we combine a filter and a vector search. And so in this case, we're going to say we want books with have more than 400 pages that are set in the Arctic by kind of meaning, by the vector search, limited to 3, and in this case, only returning the title and the author. And so let's run those as well. We go npm npx tsx quickstart find, and we should find 3 different responses there. So, fantastic. What we have is we connected to the database. We found 3 books with ratings greater than 4.7. We got 5, 4.8, and 5. We used vector search to find a scary novel, and it was called Under Ghosts in the Universe. That sounds pretty scary. And then finally, using filters and vector search, we found 3 books, and we only return the title and the author, and they come with the ID as well. And so, Books in the Arctic, Through Operas of Lost Souls, In Stars of Eternal Night, and In Flames in the Dark. So in the last few minutes, I showed you how to create a vector database with AstraDB and run a bunch of different searches using TypeScript. Be sure to check out our documentation for more information and tutorials on how to build applications using AstraDB.